When the rivers dance and break their moonsticks, fog makes way for the impossible. A black boy, on the run, no more dangerous thing. The parishioner sounds the alarm, lets out his hounds, makes them say, makes them run. A black boy sinks his head underwater, hiding in the belly.
This is Kevin Latimer. He's a senior creative writing major here at Cleveland State. He's also the president of CSU Writing Collective, a club he founded in the fall of 2016. I sat down with Kevin to talk about the CSU Writing Collective, his own journey as a writer, and writing in general.
There was a creative writing club beforehand, and they would meet up every Friday. There'd be like 4 of them, they would just share work. But I thought that it could be more. So me and about 4 or 5 friends of mine had this idea over the summer of 2016 to start this club, and the next semester was born. One of the problems we had, and it's kind of weird to call this a problem, is that we had too many people. There would be times, last year we'd have 25 people in a room, which is awesome. I'm glad so many people are interested in writing. But it's really hard to workshop 25 people. So we wanted to make it a more intimate environment. So it's the same format from the club to the collective. It's more of just a name change and a change in what we want to do.
And so you talked a little bit about workshopping. For the club, what is kind of your guys' main goals?
We pretty much do 3 things. One is just coming in, we all share our writing, we all talk about what was working, what isn't. The second one is we do like workshops. We'll take 1 or 2 people and spend the entire time workshopping whatever they're bringing that day. And third, I haven't done it this semester, but we typically bring in a teacher from CSU to come in and talk about a genre. So flash fiction or poetry, and they'd speak and we do an activity. It's very diverse. It just depends. I think the main goal is to get people comfortable with their writing, and comfortable speaking in public is a big one.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but writing's a really intimate thing for a lot of people, and it's really personal to them. How do you kind of get people comfortable and get them to, kind of be willing to share their work with people?
It's funny because I don't think I've ever had the problem with people not willing to share their work. I think people are initially hesitant because I think it's the fear of, people don't like my work, they don't like me. It's like the fear of being judged. But I think if you create an environment that's very welcoming, people are much more likely just to share. And that's kind of how it's been.
How do you kind of build that welcoming environment for people?
I think the first thing is knowing what you want to be. Having a clear goal, I think, is the most important part. I think it's all about the people you have involved too. The only consistent in the club has been me, and I've been the president since we started. But we've had a revolving door of people. It's not mandatory. You don't have to come to every meeting of the creative. I don't care if you do or not. If you want to come to one meeting, that's fine. I want it to be more like, you want to come today and just chill and talk about writing, that's fine. If not, that's cool too. I just think making it a very low-key environment helps a lot.
You guys have your meetings, and how often do you guys have meetings?
This semester, every other week.
Are there any other things you try and do? Do you guys try and set up events to share with?
So we try to do one big event every semester. Last semester we did a play festival where me and the secretary at the time, we wanted to do a current student, alumni, and a graduate event. So we asked for submissions, and everyone who won got $100 would perform their play in the auditorium. We had about 50 or 60 people come to that. We go to AWP every year, which is the American Writers and Writing Programs Conference. It's like the Comic-Con for writers, if that makes sense. So we try to, I think one of the bigger things is what happens once you leave CSU. How you can continue to write once you leave, or you're forced to write and you're forced to do assignments. And getting people involved with the community helps a lot with that.
Is there any events you're currently planning? Any events that are coming up right now?
Yeah, so besides AWP, which we're doing again in March, we want to do a reading, probably in the atrium, probably start of next semester. The goal would be, once again, to get people, if you're comfortable reading in here, I think the next logical step is read in front of strangers. So that's the next goal.
Is that something when you guys are workshopping that you guys work on a lot? Do you work on?
Yeah. So everyone who comes in here and brings a piece, I always make them read it themselves firsthand, because it's different hearing your work in your ears than seeing it on the paper, especially if you're bringing in poetry, where sound is so important. And it's really easy to just miss something when you're reading it, but when you're speaking it and you have to say the words, it's really hard to miss something. So it's often encouraging.
What do you try and do with them? How do you try and workshop it? What's kind of your first step?
It depends on the work. And generally I ask people what they want. I ask people, do you want like critique? Do you want like a line edit? Or do you want, this was working for me or this isn't working for me? Or do you just want us all just to hear your work? because a lot of our members are freshmen too. We have a lot of seniors who's in grad students, so it's always different levels where people are looking at.
Do you have like a hierarchy of, okay, these people are workshopping and are going to edit things, and these people are the people presenting things?
It's typically just me helping people, I try to get people involved, but I think when people don't have confidence in their own work, it's kind of hard to have confidence in editing.
How did you yourself kind of build that confidence in your work?
Carol Pagels, how?
Okay.
Yeah.
So her?
Yeah, her. I didn't start at CSU as a creative writing student. I actually started as a philosophy major, and I took a creative writing class just out of boredom. And I'd never written a story before I was 22 years old, or a poem or anything like that. So like when you start writing everything you write, it's bad. That's everyone. Even Shakespeare had some crappy plays back in the day. I think the first 2 years it was just trying to discover what my voice was and what I was interested in writing, and I kind of found that. And the last year has just been taking the work I've already done and trying to polish it and be complete. Even now I'm not super confident. I think like getting published and getting awards, so that helps with the confidence. That's helped me. But I think it just comes with time and practice and doing it over and over and over again.
So, you kind of right when I asked you, you had a person in mind. Do you try and be that person for the people who come in for the collective? Is that
I want to
kind
be.
of your goal?
I always encourage people, if, let's say you're at home and you've written a poem, you want somebody to hear it, text it to me. People do. I just got one before we started this interview, because I think it's really important to have trusted people to read your work, because you're not going to be at CSU forever. You're not going to, even next semester you'll have different classmates from when your work's like last semester. So if you can find those 3 or 4 people that you can trust to send things works, and I tend to, I'm like, anyone, just feel free.
You talked about finding your voice, and you're probably still finding it. It's a thing that
Evolves a
evolves.
lot.
But what kind of is, when you think about your voice, what's the thing that you kind of like to share with your work?
I'm big on experimenting with form and genre bending. Right now, I have been working on a series of melodramas in poetry form about what it means to be a black boy in America. So it's taking, one part of it is a slavery narrative, the other part is present, and the rest of it is in space, which is a lot of David Bowie, a lot of roots. So that's where I'm at right now.
Has that always been something that's been very central to you, is kind of that voice of, kind of the black experience, or kind of
and I think for a lot of poets who are black or marginalized identities, it feels like you have to write about this thing, because like you're a woman poet, you have to write about drama. You're black, you have to write about the black experience. But for me, it always started with the Brelo case 3 or 4 years ago, and that's when I really started following politics, and I got this shortly following that. So for the last 3 or 4 years, that's been something I've been interested in.
Do you think sharing their experiences through writing like that is something that you think really, builds that narrative? Do you think that's something that's a really good way to get out that message? Is that kind of what you're thinking about here?
That's been true for the last 500 years. Think of like slave narratives, or like Frederick Douglass, people who wrote to get the word out there through the experience or through art. I think it's really important to do that. And especially if you're a marginalized writer, where the political is the personal. And so like these things affect me, and I want to write about them. And sometimes that makes people uncomfortable, and I'm fine with that. But I think exposure is the most important thing.
But is there any writers that you try and emulate? Anybody who you kind of look up to?
I think emulate's a weird word, but try to look up to. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Dennis Smith, who is a queer black poet. Sarah Kane, who is a British playwright. Heather Bristol, I like a lot. Contemporary poets. I think, especially with the fall of like meter and being in such rigid form with poetry, where no one writing poetry in Imbic Pentameter anymore. It just opened up this world where people who previously weren't being heard in the poetry world, people who were women, or black, or trans, or what be you, and now they have this big soapbox and being pushed forward to the forefront.
You talked a little bit about nobody writing in Imbic Pentameter anymore. Do you think that, or how does that give people a lot more room to kind of expand on their ideas?
So I think why it was more of a divorce from academia, where people have been trying to put poetry back in the streets per se. Like look at the rise of poetry slams, which has become huge. That wasn't possible 50 years ago, where poetry has taken on more than one definition of just Imbic Pentameter and meter on the page, where performance poetry can be a thing, or some people consider messaging to be poetry. I think it's helped open up the world to people who previously thought they couldn't write poetry because they didn't have their MFA, or they weren't in school, or they didn't read the classics.
Even before, because you said that a few years ago, you hadn't really written a story yet. Were you still into poetry and creative writing before that? What was kind of your world before you started?
I wasn't into it at all, actually. Before that, I was really big into history. I'm really big into Roman and early American history. But I honestly read a book, and it's my favorite book. And the language that she used in the book I thought was really beautiful, and I wanted to emulate it. And I took the Intro to Creative Writing class here on a whim. I had the opening on my schedule, and I just fell in love. And the rest is history.
Which book was that?
It's called The Crooked God Machine by Autumn Christian. And I think the premise is that humans have sinned for such a long time, and God is back for his vengeance. And the populace has to live under these constant plagues that God is bringing down because they've all sinned. And it talks about what the role of religion is in society, but does it in poetic form. So I was like, people can write about like serious topics and still end up using this beautiful language to describe something beautiful.
Poetry was something you didn't know you were really into. Yeah. You took your creative writing class, and now you're kind of in a whole new world. Do you think not only this club, but clubs, writing clubs are good for that? Good for kind of introducing these people to things that they might not have ever done?
Yeah, because I think writing in general is such a solitary thing. It's just you and your pen or your laptop or whatever you use to write with. Clubs give a sense of community. There's other writers, people who are struggling with writer's block like you are, or writing about the same things that you are willing to read your work. I think that helps a lot, introduce you to the literary world.
How do you guys try and reach the people who may not think of themselves as poets or creative writers?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, in our mission statement is we have varying skill levels. Like I said, some of us are freshmen, and some of us have been writing for 10 or 15 years. So I think the first thing we do is every semester when I bring people in here is we all share something. It doesn't have to be a poem or a story. It could be a joke you heard or something like that. And I'm like, so that joke you told, let's talk about the poetic elements of that joke. But poetry's everywhere in the world. And I think people need to realize that you don't need to have a book published to be a writer. Do you write? Do you like writing? Then you're a writer.
Outside of CSU and outside of the Writing Collective, what is something that you're really passionate about that you really want to put out in the world?
So about 3 weeks ago, I had a play performed at a theater called Convergence Continuum. And my next goal, I think, is I wouldn't say I lost love for writing plays. I just hadn't done it for so long. And this sort of reignited the flame in me, so I've been working on that. But most of my time is just with Barnhouse, as I am the founder and I am responsible for most of the stuff. We have our first issue coming out in 5 weeks, so we're getting that together. We have another poetry reading in about 15 days, so we're getting that together. So that's pretty much my main goal. My main goal is to try to see how big we can get this thing. And it's been going pretty well so far.
And for people who may be listening who may not know about Barnhouse, could you explain a little bit about
Sure.
it?
Barnhouse is a biannual literary journal in print based out of Cleveland, Ohio. We publish fiction, nonfiction, poetry, essays, and soon-to-be plays. We publish twice a year, January and June. We pay our contributors $20, and it's always free to submit. Our website is barnhousejournal.com. We encourage submissions for people who wouldn't consider themselves writers or emerging writers. This is their first publication. We're publishing people from Nigeria and Pakistan, and people from Cleveland, Ohio. So we like to think of ourselves as a group of people who really like writing and want to give writers a platform where their work can be seen.
And do you find things like the CSU Writing Collective or even other writing clubs you're a part of kind of help draw people those opportunities that they might
I think
know
so.
about?
Yeah, I would have never known about anything going on in the community without being in clubs or talking to other people. It's so often somebody's like, I am going to this poetry reading tonight. I was like, oh, I didn't know there was a poetry reading tonight. I think for me, forming this club 2 years ago helped to form Barnhouse. It helped me realize that there's a love for writing in the city, and there just needs to be a platform for it. Like I thought that 2 years ago was a love for writing in the school, and there needed to be a platform for it, and I did that. So that sort of was a logical next leap, because I'm graduating soon. And what am I going to do when I graduate? And hence Barnhouse.
Are you graduating this semester or the next semester?
Next semester, spring.
Other than Barnhouse and the CSU Writing Collective, are there any other clubs, maybe, national, like citywide clubs, maybe even smaller communities that you're also a part of that you think help, inform your writing?
Yeah, so I think Literary Cleveland is the biggest one. They do workshops constantly for people who are new writers or advanced writers, where they'll bring in a teacher to teach people the basics of whatever form they're teaching. I think that's really cool. There's something called Brews and Prose, which is a reading series that takes place at Market Garden Brewery, where it's all these things are free, where you come in and they have readers. There's a lot of stuff out there, and it just takes a simple Google search and see what you find.
What is kind of the thing about writing that people miss, and the thing that you really would want to convey about it to people?
I think the fact that a lot of people just see writing as catharsis. That, like, if I'm depressed or sad, I'll just write it out in my journal and it'll be gone. I think the idea that's more important besides catharsis is the idea that writing in general, I'm not going to say writing can change the world, because writing is not changing the world, but it helps. I mean, in terms of times of crisis or times of sadness or happiness, I think writing is something that could be there and helps convey. I think writing helps convey emotions that are hard to explain otherwise. If that makes sense. I think that's the most important thing.
As part of our interview, I asked Kevin to bring a piece of writing he wanted to share. This poem, which you heard at the beginning of the podcast, was written a few days before I met with him to record, and it strikes a lot of similar themes that are present in his other works.
The First Scene from the Field by Kevin Latimer. When the rivers dance and break their moonsticks, fog makes way for the impossible. A black boy, on the run, no more dangerous thing. The parishioner sounds the alarm, lets out his hounds, makes them say, makes them run. A black boy sinks his head underwater, hiding in the belly of the beast. It growls, a low tide dying of thirst. That boy shivers next to broken bones of other runaway slaves, slack-jawed and strewn. His shackles stick to swamp skin, seeking to protect what the world will not. Above, the sound of leaves crunching in the night intermixed with the cry of soaring bullets. A hound yelps out. That boy cocks his hen and it blasts off like sirens, his bright red sticking to the air. The rivers dance backwards in the night, parting way for the Red Sea soaked with black boy's blood. The slaves at home perform a subtle funeral, stab a rock, mark another one down, drown it with the river's blood.
For the Cleveland Stater, I'm Sean McDonnell.